Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So great to see some familiar family out there. We are so excited. We've been excited for many, 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 many weeks to host this. Welcome to December. Can we believe it's already December? My name is Traci Kato-Kiriyama, pronouns they, she. I am a multi-transdisciplinary artist and really am excited to have folks from literally around the country. Uh, I think all three of our readers tonight are based on the sort of East Coast or Eastern sort of like time zone. And they are tuning in from various areas tonight. They'll all talk about that. But one of the things that we consider when we're having a reading, because we do have so many folks that we feature every single month throughout the year and throughout the past 9 years. And so we, really want to think about like difference in location, uh, age, generation. One of the things that I was very excited about being a multi-disciplinary artist was to have three multidisciplinary artists. I don't know if any of our readers identify principally as one thing, and I get the sense perhaps not. So I always think that's really exciting to have a room full of that energy. And so think about, your questions as they come, as folks are reading, as we're talking through their bios. And you can put it in the chat and we'll come back to hopefully at least a couple at the end. So the way it's going to go, I'm going to start by saying a little bit about Nikkei, Discover Nikkei, and about our column, Nikkei Uncovered. I'm going to read the three bios, and then we're going to go right into the readings. Oh, goodness. That's not good. Let me not get a phone call right now. Excuse me for that. So we are going to introduce the poets with their bios, and then the readers are going to go, and then they're going to pass it on to each other. We're going to be doing a special group reading, and then go into some conversation. Before we begin, I wanted to read a special piece that came to me just a few weeks ago. I had the really great honor and opportunity to present some of my work in Bordeaux, France at the University Bordeaux-Montaigne. And I also got to co-facilitate a writing workshop with Mike Songson, a poet here in LA, who's just amazing. You should check out his work. And in that writing workshop, we met incredible students from all over the world who are now based in France. And one student in particular is a master's student, a graduate student in creative writing, and hadn't really written something personally in the past 4 years. And there was sort of this outpouring. And we are just really honored that Larissa gave us permission to share this piece tonight. It is 3 a.m. currently in France, so Larissa will see a video of this later. So I wanted to share this with you now as we begin our reading tonight. This is by Larissa Mahou, and it is called Fig. I remember the sweetness of figs. Let me say one thing. Mike had this beautiful prompt which allowed people to very easily enter into the writing space. And it was simply, I remember, the refrain of I remember. I hope you'll take that with you and write something. So, fig. I remember the sweetness of figs set up in bundles, decorating an old bowl. I remember the smell of jasmine, smell of roses, smell of dirt, smell of grass, smell of home. I remember the land, one that I may rarely see again, and the echoes of those who have walked it and blessed it. I remember the dreams of a better country, one which stands on its own. The Switzerland of the East, they said. I remember they will come back soon, but we never came back. because I remember the sounds of explosions, the sounds of buildings breaking, falling, dropping, crashing. I remember limbs, blood, and I remember the faces of despair, the faces on the floor and those on the wall. They call me. I remember when you said, I'll be okay there. I'll be protected. How it's better. I remember thinking that as well. I remember now, and I know, the paradox of living under war. I remember physical war, the war of bombs and occupation. I remember now, and I know my war, my inner war, breaking, falling, dropping, crashing, while being in a safe haven and you're in hell. I remember fearing death, but I know now. Respite only occurs under the rubbles, in my tomb, in your tomb, under the fig-flavored dirt. Larissa Mahou, 2025. Beautiful Lebanese poet in France. So thank you, Larissa, for letting us share that. Yay for Larissa and for writing and for the prompt. I remember. Thank you, Mike, for bringing that. So I'd like to briefly introduce the Discover Nikkei project and the Nikkei Uncovered poetry column series. Discover Nikkei is the Japanese American National Museum's international community-based web project with major funding from the Nippon Foundation, launched in 2005. They are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the website this year. The site is in 4 languages, English, Japanese, Spanish, and Portuguese, and shares unique Nikkei stories from around the world, including the US, Brazil, Japan, Peru, Canada, Argentina, Mexico, and many other countries. New stories are published daily on the website. This here, Nikkei Uncovered, a poetry column, is a space for the Nikkei community to share stories through diverse writings on culture, history, and personal experience. The column features a wide variety of poetic form and subject matter with themes that include history, roots, identity, food as ritual, celebration, legacy, assumptions of tradition, place, location, and community, and of course, love. In this monthly poetry column, we publish 1 to 2 and sometimes several, and in some cases, collective poems that engaged with many, many, many dozens of writers. But generally, it's about 1 to 2 who we feature on the 3rd Thursday of each month. And they are senior writers, young writers, people new to poetry, published authors, renowned writers like our guest tonight. And we really do want to present like a true web of voices and really think about intersectional beings and intersectional stories and different ways of writing, different ways of creating and sharing. So you might see poetry like with Erica that has visual art and illustration, drawing, graphics. We've had people submit photography along with that. And we've had people who also have allowed us, their families and descendants have allowed us to publish posthumously as well. So we've been able to do some beautiful side-by-sides with a living poet who really admired and wished they had met a certain poet in another country or in another city. And so we've been able to do that as well. We actually launched this column in December of 2016. I cannot believe it. So personal, not fun fact, but personal fact, I was going through chemo when we decided to start this column in the fall into the winter of 2016. So part of my healing journey and like kind of going through this process of, healing, recovery, remission, whatever that means. And, this whole time has really been, I've been living with this column through that whole process. So I am just really, there's something that I think I have to uncover about what that means to be in this space and really be enriched through the search and through the reception of the poems that we are gifted and allowed to feature. We have featured over 140 poets thus far, And I think links are coming into the chat. So you can please check out, all these writers. And there are, going to be so many more. We'll say more. There's some fun things happening next year. And we're going to get into the fun of tonight, though. So let's introduce our amazing poet, artists, human beings. We have 3 tonight: Aaron Caycedo-Kimura, Erica Isomura, and Syd Westley. Aaron Caycedo-Kimura is a writer, visual artist, educator, and the author of Common Grace and Ubasute. He teaches creative writing at Trinity College and University of Hartford. His honors include a McDowell Stanford Calderwood Fellowship, a Robert Pinsky Global Fellowship in Poetry, and a Connecticut Office of the Arts Artist Fellowship Award, among many, many, many other credits. Erica Isomura is a writer-artist whose creative practice incorporates written language, drawing, bookmaking, and mixed media art. She is working on a visual book which explores her family history on BC's North Coast. Her work has appeared in The Gate of Memory, poems by descendants of Nikkei wartime incarceration, and elsewhere, and so many, many more credits as well. Syd Westley is a poet and artist based in Brooklyn, New York. Their work has been supported and or published by Lambda Literary, The Adroit Journal, Berkeley Poetry Review, and others. Westley is Yonsei, and their grandparents were incarcerated in Tule Lake and Minidoka. They also write music reviews at Syd Westley Music. I will invite the poets if they want to share, if you have, if you're descendants, to please share also camp descendants information. And without further ado, we are going to just go in alphabetical order by first name. So we're going to have Aaron, who will then pass it to Erica, who will then pass it to Syd. Let's give reactions, snaps. You can unmute and give some love and welcome our poets. Thank you all so much. We're going to have Aaron take it away.
Thank you so much, Traci. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to come out and read. And thank you, everybody who tuned in this evening to hear us read. And also thank you to Discover Nikkei and Janem for making this possible. I'm going to read 7 poems for you tonight. And I write a lot about my parents and lately about my grandparents and what I've inherited from both sides of my family. The first poem I'm going to read is a short poem. It's the most recent poem that I've written out of the 7 that I'll be reading tonight. And it was written for an anthology that's coming out next year, called The Big Brutal Act from Harbor Editions. And this anthology is a response to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And this poem is about 3 things that I have inherited from my father's side of the family. And this poem is entitled Inheritance. 1. A boat ride across the Atlantic. My grandpa, Caycedo-Kimura, vegetable farmer, emigrating from Kyushu to California. 2. An incarceration during the war. My father, Joe, natural-born citizen, crammed into a horse stall. Barracks. 3 years. No due process. 3. My face with these eyes. The next poem I'm going to read is my poem that appears in The Gate of Memory that Traci mentioned, and this poem is entitled Dad Called It Camp. Tule Lake, Jerome, Arkansas, the Santa Anita racetrack. But to me, as a boy, camp meant a green pup tent, blue and white water jug, Coleman gas stove packed in the back of our Ford Falcon wagon. Mom, Dad, Maddie, me, swaddled together. Two sleeping bags, warm even in rain. Maddie with tight grip at each end of a stick, gill kebabbing five silvery fish Dad caught in the lake. He said he learned to cook in camp, perfected judo throws in Brother Mitz's club, chased Brother Frank with the garter snake. Sounded like a long vacation. My mother got sick and died in camp. The only sad thing he said. No mention of barbed wire, guard towers, cold wind or hot dust blowing through rows and rows and rows of barracks. My next poem is about my paternal grandmother, and this poem is entitled Grandmother. I imagine the delicate pucker of her mouth, gaping like a wound, her sokuhatsu updo, an oily black tangle on a dusty pillow. On May 24th, 1945, 18 years before I was born, Caycedo-Kimura died at Tule Lake. Block 53, Barrack 5, Room C, maybe D, on an Army-issued cot. In rooms opening to the rafters on either side, clear conversations of other imprisoned families. Wind blowing dust through gaps between shrinking floorboards. With my grandfather, her 8 children, she was forced from her Inglewood farm into the camps. First Santa Anita, then Jerome in Arkansas, then back to California. Our grandma had bad motion sickness, my cousin Jay tells me. The camp newspaper, New Star, misspelled her name, left out the Y, but got her age right, 49. My next poem is an ekphrastic poem inspired by a photograph, a black and white photograph taken by Tom Parker in 1943. And it's a picture of a woman named Minnie Negoro. Minnie was incarcerated in Heart Mountain concentration camp. And after she came out of camp, she made a life for herself, came here to Connecticut, my state, and she established the ceramics department at the University of Connecticut. And this poem is entitled Elegy for Minnie Negoro, after a photograph by Tom Parker, 1943. Look at those hands, poised like a dancer's. Without fan or parasol, they move in unison, one inside, one out of a wet clay vessel centered and spinning on a potter's wheel. 22, a student at UCLA when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Forced to report to Pomona Fairgrounds, transferred by train to Heart Mountain, a U.S. concentration camp for natural-born citizens who look like her. In a striped work shirt, she learns to throw clay. Where will that bowl go? To Rower? That cup to Minidoka? Are those white plates for Tule Lake where my father and family eat in the mess hall? Up and down, her fingertips form something of her own making, a life of art, a skill to pass on under her patient gaze. Now I'm going to switch on over to my mother's side of the family. My father was born in San Gabriel, California, and my mother was actually born here in the United States in Bayonne, New Jersey. But before the war, my grandfather took the family to Japan, where he was from. So during the war, my mother and her family lived in Tokyo and were dodging fire bombs. And this poem is entitled Garbage Can. My 83-year-old mother yells at a sanitation employee over the phone. I'm a little Japanese woman. The black 96-gallon can provided by the city is almost as tall as she. Impossible for her to push and steer from the side of the house, out the gate, over stepping stones and pebbles, down the driveway. If you don't give me a smaller can, I'm going to dump this one on your desk. I have no idea how she would do this, but she says it with that chutzpah she needed after the war. To find food, rebuild shelter, bury bodies after B-29s dropped firebombs on Tokyo, destroying 60% of the wood and paper city. Even when Dad was alive, my parents didn't produce much garbage. But he was taller, stronger, able to handle the can's bulk. Now that he's dead, it's post-war again. The city gives Mom the 20-gallon size, no taller than a shopping cart. Every Monday night, she pushes it to the curb, as if it were filled with charred bone and ash. My next poem is about my maternal grandfather. I never met my grandparents, but my mother said that I would have loved her father, and I think I would have. So this poem is kind of me daydreaming about meeting him. And this is called From the Great Depression. Oji-chan, what are you doing? I asked my grandpa in a daydream. It's 1933, and somehow I'm there, a child. We're on our knees under the red oaks of Inwood Hill Park at the northern tip of Manhattan. He brings the family here, including my 5-year-old mother, every Sunday to gather moss under the guise of going on a picnic. With that mustache, my grandpa's a Japanese Charlie Chaplin, but with round, wire-frame glasses, no bowler hat or cane. He's laying small rectangles of green carpet into the bento boxes that once held gohan, tofu, and takuan. I'm going to sell these back home, he says. By home, he means Myrtle Avenue in Brooklyn, where he runs a one-meal restaurant that serves tendon. Factory workers from the Navy Yard come to eat every day. Other American customers buy his many Japanese moss gardens, adorned with round stones and a plant marker, good fortune inked on in kanji. In 2 years, my grandpa, Shinshi Hoshino, will have made enough money to drive across the U.S. with his family, sell back to Japan, and not work for 2 years. Helping him with the bento box lids, I ask, Oji-chan, isn't this stealing? He assures me, it grows back, ne. And I have one more poem I'd like to read for you. Thank you again, everyone, for coming out tonight to hear us read. And thank you again, Tracy and the Discover Nikkei Janman team. This poem is entitled it stays with you. Does it look too Japanese? I ask Louisa as I step out of the dressing room wearing a short-sleeved cotton shirt, half priced at the Banana Republic outlet store. The dark blue material with horizontal white spattered stripes reminds me of yukata fabric. It looks like a noren, she says, but not in a bad way. I imagine customers ducking under my arms for seats at the sushi bar. Irashai! I want to cross the Pacific, eat and drink with my Honshu and Kyushu ancestors, but part of me is stuck in the California of my childhood, trying to convince classmates I'm American too, insisting I don't get fish cake with candles on my birthday. Fake laughing as Deirdre Munson, auburn hair, red plastic headband, throws back my Valentine. After returning the shirt to the rack, then trying it on again, I buy it. Shibui ne. I hear my dead mother's approval. Goes well with your jeans. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Now I'm going to pass it on over to Erica.
Thank you so much, Erin. That was really awesome to hear. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica, and I'm a Japanese Canadian and Chinese Canadian artist and writer. And I'm going to start actually my reading today with a poem from a Billy Ray Belcour book that's new called The Idea of an Entire Life. And I just read this recently on the plane to the West Coast. And so some of the lines that really resonated with me, I wanted to start with his work and move into my own. And this is a piece called The Past Tense. In a letter dated July 24th, 1935, from the office of the Indian agent at Driftpile, Alberta, an Indian agent, a government henchman who enforced the Indian Act, a piece of legislation that, for example, forbade the practice of ceremony as well as the use of indigenous languages, describes a Cree man's attempt to rescue his children from an Indian residential school. 1. During this era, reserves were, in effect, open-air prisons. When you live in an open-air prison, even the rain feels like a slap from God. 2. The mind is an absent ruler. It is a shape I try to fill in. Most days I am as hungry as a shoreline. The lake is my ancestor, even if it will outlast me. I am serious when it comes to desire, if only because a man is a difficult thing to dwell inside of. 5. Sometimes history is a single sentence, spoken in the background when you're on the phone with someone else. It makes for a terrible song. I hear it sometimes, then not at all. 6. Silence is a room where language resides in the walls. The subtle erasures of childhood, the negative space left behind by lost sons, etc. I do not have a mother tongue. A mouth without a mother tongue speaks in echoes. My words ricochet. I chase after them, even though they're mostly dying light. And there's more to this poem, but I'm going to stop here. And I wanted to share that because the piece I'm going to read is from an ongoing project I'm working on that engages with Cantonese language. So this is from a series called Part Chinese. And For those of you who aren't familiar with Cantonese, it's a tonal language. There's 6 tones, and there's quite a few words in that really have different meanings, but sound really similar to, I think, an English ear specifically. And so being someone who wasn't raised speaking Japanese or Chinese, Cantonese has been really interesting to me because it's spoken far less than Mandarin. And the few words that I do kind of know in the language are mostly food related words. And so most of these poems relate to food. And similarly, like I'm Yonsei, so I'm Japanese fourth generation, but I'm also fourth generation Chinese. And so both of those really inform my work. And so this piece is about fish. And my Issei great grandfather was actually a fisherman in northern BC, which is the book that Tracy mentioned in my bio is kind of exploring that history. And so I'm going to share this longer poem kind of engaging with those themes. And so I guess the other context is that I think of these as kind of dictionary poems because there's the word that I'm using in multiple meanings that are kind of informing the poems. And hopefully you'll get that as I read this. So it starts with a proverb from the Dictionary of Chinese Proverbs. Rain during springtime is as precious as oil. When you shift a tone, remake the shape of one's vocal pitch, the word for rain becomes the word for fish. In Cantonese, to the untrained ear, it could sound like the word you. The tones of this language rise and fall to create new meaning, just as water vapor moves up, across, and down through the sky to produce rain, sleet, or snow. You translates to fish. You translates to rain. The Cantonese language is sometimes compared to singing. I once performed a choral rendition of the 1920s song Singing in the Rain in my primary grade children's choir. Our performances may have used umbrellas as props, but I cannot quite remember. I can still sing the song from memory, and if you ask, I will reel off lyrics and melody without concern for misinterpretation. Wish I could string Cantonese words together in this same uncomplicated way. I open my mouth, but no sound comes out. My tongue strikes the back of my teeth. You is slang for embarrassing. You could also refer to a bruise. It should not feel embarrassing to explain why I cannot speak the language, yet it remains a source of shame. An ocean away from where Cantonese originates, the place where I took my first breath is renowned for its proximity to mountains. It is notorious for rain. Pacific Northwest rains are caused by the Cascade Mountains. They obstruct movement of air. Airflow rises, condenses into water droplets, precipitates, falling from sky, dropping upon and at the foot of mountains. Rainfall feeds into freshwater streams and rivers. This water nourishes forests, provides a shady haven for spawning salmon and the survival of baby fry. You could allude to a mountain range. Between Luklukwyatin Mountain and Stallo, a crude oil pipeline snakes through the forest adjacent to the river near my childhood home. It's here where this project expands, doubling in growth. The pipeline company calls the RCMP to arrest protesters sitting in trees. Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, interfaith leaders, environmentalists, scientists, the city, even my mother disagree. Heads shaking, tongues clicking. A local, no, transnational controversy. I walk beside river until birdsong fades. Forest reverberating with chainsaws, beeping heavy machinery. I film videos of pollution in the creek, clearing of underbush and trees. I stop when a worker turns his camera on me. I bite my lip, try to avoid gnashing my teeth. Eventually, I hesitate to visit river as I used to. Neon pylons, blue fences materialize, fluorescent lights shine from dusk to sunrise. Police linger in the thicket, and yet hummingbirds still attempt to build nests. I've watched salmon return to this river performing end-of-life rituals on more than one occasion. When these fish lay their eggs, they are at their weakest, often discolored and bruised. Salmon will die after spawning. They've reached the end of their life cycle and prepare to put their lives on the line, investing in the arrival of the next generation. Bodies soften, turning to corpse as they swim upstream. In decay, they reveal a set of carnivorous teeth, like a range of tiny, jagged mountains. Did you know that a spring salmon's teeth grow in several rows? U relates to remnants, or what remains. My Issei great-grandfather relied on wild salmon's abundance before World War II. In north coastal Kashan waters, he fished at the mouth of the river to generate a livelihood. I assume he cut his teeth as a fisherman in rural Japan. Back then, numbers were truly plentiful. Indigenous oral histories recall generations running back. They say salmon fishing today is akin to a sixth of what it was 50 to 70 years past. And please don't get me started on the disappearance of orcas in the Salish Sea. Less than 80 remain. They miss salmon too and forage hungrily. You, 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 you. Abundant fish, fat on belly, fertile or rich. A set of irregular teeth. Beforehand, a fisher anticipates a fish at one's ease, carefree. I chastise myself. Is there not more I could do? I could campaign against fish farms and the aquaculture industry for spread of disease, pathogens, sea lice. I could speak out against neocolonial profit, government policy, DFO bureaucracy. Yet sometimes when I open my mouth, no sound comes out. Instead, I sit in front of a keyboard, fist pressed into cheek, attempting to make poems out of the English language. You, 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 you. To encounter a fisherman in relation to empire, what remains after, goes beyond, silt, river sludge, a bruise, yellowish black, residue, embarrassing, to tell to, a fish. With meager language for the miracle that is witnessing this life-affirming ceremony, I gasp, point, exclaim. The edges of my mouth can't help but soar as I watch wild salmon forge on, teeth bared, battered, rotted, mottled skin, decomposing fins, pushing forward against all odds, their refusal to give in. You, 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 Sun you, Salmon you, Gum. To recover or heal, the sacrificial right to pray for rain, to defend a place name, a reputation, and together with the mountain range, spring rain, gift from sky, salmon, take part in, an instinctive understanding. Come autumn, I'll be standing by the river again. Thank you. And I'm going to pass this over to Syd. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, everyone so far, to Tracy and the Janum people for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here and to be reading tonight. I'm going to be reading some newer and some older poems. I'm going to be reading 5 in total. And a lot of them are about my grandparents. I'm Yonsei. Um, my mom's Japanese, my dad is English. And I was very close with my grandma. And she passed away when I was in 2018 when I was in college. And my grandpa, who I was named after, his name was Dan Sidney Mashahara, passed away when I was pretty little. But I haven't been writing about my heritage or my family that much in the past few years. So this is a very special opportunity to me to be thinking about them again. So here goes. Elegy. At the Peace Park, I find I can only understand death in approximation. I see a shadow, I imagine a body. I hear a child, I imagine a history. The sky is a long, gray sea, unending. I am not in Japan, but Pismo Beach. Wednesday, fucked up. All I wanted was to make out with my friends. Today is Trans Day of Remembrance. Memory is a container, all the dead stuffed inside. All the dead trans people don't care if you're remembering them, I think. They're dead. But maybe that's too cruel. If not to memory, where do they go? Waves lap at the shore, or a murmuration in the gray sky. At the service, my father recreates my grandmother's life, her emigration from England, her hatred of America, her laughter. She becomes more alive to me as she becomes increasingly dead. My mother's mother was interned during World War II in a camp called Minidoka. When she died, I felt a whole history had enclosed itself. When my father's mother died, it felt different, less significant. When Dylan died, there was a language I felt begin to slip away. I wish, in fact, I could be crueler to those I love. My grandmother's funeral is makeshift. My family, my girlfriend, my cousins, my dog. Her house off a golf course on the California coast. For hours, I walk alone on the beach. I smoke some weed to make the ghosts more hospitable. It doesn't matter how I feel about them. They're all there. When I began transitioning, my mother began grieving her eldest daughter. Maybe in her mind, I sit with her parents among the ghosts. Maybe my ghosts, too, are my own creations. I find ash in the hollow of my cheek, ash in the water, ash in the air. The second one is a newer one that I wrote last year, almost a year ago now. It's pretty different. It was from a project where I wrote a manuscript in a day. But I talk about going to see my grandparents at the end. David on the phone continues to think Raphael is the love of his life. Because he is an Aries and Raphael is a Cancer, David believes of course he can win him back. I say, I'm writing a book in a day. That sounds terrible, David says. Yes, I respond, even though I disagree. That's why I am on the phone with you. I am walking, but I have no umbrella. Once I thought it was punk not to use an umbrella and to just get wet. It is never punk to do what you think is punk. David says Syd is working at a food shack and doing workshops in Berkeley when Asha asks how I am. I am walking towards Piedmont. There is Howe Street, and then there is Susan Howe and Fanny Howe and Marie Howe. The sweet small florist has no prices on the flowers. This suggests they are out of my price range. Sometimes I pick flowers from other people's yards. The nice big open white ones from the house on the hill. I am visiting Nana at the Chapel of the Chimes. It is a good place to go because no one harasses you, plus it is often empty. Someone brought Nana and Papa Christmas flowers. It wasn't my parents, so I don't know who it could have been. Nana has been here since 2018, Papa 1999. Nana was moody and difficult like my mom and like me, so surely it was nice for Papa to have 20 years with just the sound of rushing water and the random whispers of passerby. Nana and Papa met a long time ago. They started writing letters, and then he sent her a ring in the mail. Papa took photos and liked to fish and cook and tell jokes. Their names are engraved in an austere font, which I like, and which feels of a different, Japanese, sensibility than Antoinette below them. Her name looks Gothic, which I also like. Papa grew up in Alameda before he was sent to Tule Lake in high school. The Methodist Church in Alameda has pictures of him as a kid. Nana has a toughness about her that I think she developed in my mom. Maybe it's that difficulty. This is why my mom had a hard time when I told her I was trans. But this is why I am trans in the first place. A man is cutting flowers methodically. I like the pink ones he has picked, but now that I can see them more clearly, I don't. On the ceiling, which is mostly skylights, it reads, "All things are possible to him that believeth." I don't believe this is true. Here is a system and its order. Now in my head, I am far from Nana and Papa, though I've come all this way to talk with them. They've told me what I needed to hear. I am on my own. They are dead. But I can make of them enough to feel less alone. The rain stops. I walk home. The dogs keep on their coats. Um, this third one is called Elegy Attempts. I don't usually write poems with the same title, but these were written many years apart, and so I reference elegy twice. An elegy, if you don't know, is a poem often about a person who's dead or a grief poem. Elegy Attempts. I pick up my pen and put it back down again. Who died and what am I trying to do? I have killed many plants. I am notorious for overwatering. I am learning new words every day so I can say things that some people have already known. If my grandmother's ashes are in an urn in Piedmont, can I find my way back, and how so? Yesterday, another trans woman died, and I didn't cry until I couldn't write a poem about it. There is a word for this in Japanese. It does not translate. I will not try. I drove 7 hours north of Marin to confirm something my grandmother once told me. The sky felt low and suffocating. I thought I could not last 2 days here. How much violence does it take to make me a man? I am hurting. After Pulse, I did not write for many months. I just did things I thought were stupid, like yoga. I am not a good child, never was. What was I saying? I was named after a man I did not know. I am turning into him. Is this a better elegy? When my mother wanted a girl, I cut off my hair and left the house. There are memories that I will not write down. Will they die when I do? I really hope so. Can I write a poem about my grandmother without mentioning internment once? There is no resurrection. I have given her dresses to Goodwill. In the morning, I will climb out of my bed and water my 5 plants. How insufferable can I get? She did not know I kissed girls. Would she have tried to leave the page? I press hard to the paper until my hand begins to hurt. When I was in high school, before my grandma passed away, I did basically a series of interviews where I interviewed family members and like family friends about their experiences, because I was really stressed about her passing away and like all these memories dying with her. And I wrote a bunch of poems that kind of came out of that. And I also traveled to Tule Lake and Manzanar with my mom And when I was at Tule Lake, where my grandpa was, I found out that there was a Native American tribe, the Modoc people, who still exist, but they were pushed out of where Tule Lake was in order to make space for Tule Lake. And I was really struck by the irony of that, and just kind of the horror of that. So this is a poem about that. How did the physical space of the internment camps contribute to your experiences? It was so barren. It was so empty. It was so lonely. I never understood how a space could feel so lifeless. It was a nothing that went on forever. And now to find out it was a land with so much life. It was a land with no conception of empty. It was a land of peoples and not lonelies. And I guess it makes a kind of sense. Is there a way to leave a space without footprints? Is there a way to leave a space without soil moved and taken and left behind? It was so empty, as in an act of remembrance, as in an act of not forgetting. And you know the land does not forget. And you know the land does not forget that it was the ground a people were moved out of only so another people could be moved into. Of course, there is a point to this. The movement of peoples creates empties, and what was my experience if not empty? That was kind of honestly about my experience visiting the camps because as Erin talked about, like my grandma talked about it in really like very vivid and like lifeful terms. And honestly, it was like it was amazing. I met all these people and played baseball and whatever, all this stuff. But I was really struck by the barrenness of the landscape when I visited. And then I have one more. This is maybe the oldest. This was for my grandma. Love letters to Toshi. One. When the light breaks, how does it feel against the of your body? When it rains, which do you wear and do you think of when you do? It's been 1 days since you, and the earth hasn't even slowed down. There have been a great many which burned down the mountains, and then a rain which hasn't stopped in many. O Toshi, it has been raining in too. I have kissed often and collected the rainwater in the back of. There are so many I have to give you, and so many words that I can't. I think of in the way that she held your each, the way I hold in the mornings. There is a softness in that, one that I learned from walking with you. There is a, in me, one that I am trying to find the two. If only you had had more, I think you would have liked to. Keeps me company on the nights when I can't help but your. I am not lonely anymore. How do I tell you that I feel so much more alive? Two. Nana, some things hold me better than others, and when you left, I turned to the earth. She holds me too in her hands late at night. As is light, there is soil, and I feel her in my palms and dig and dig and dig. I wish you could hear the wind's soft whistle. I wish you could know the slight bend of the trees at my touch, the feel of the stones beneath my feet. 3. That a body could hold it all, that a death could overflow. A granddaughter becomes a grandson. I am the same child, the same child. I say you do not reject me from heaven. I say there is no world in which we do not inherit each other. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, to all the poets. And now I get to pass it back to Tracy.
Thank you so much, Syd. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you so much, Erin. Um, I will again invite people to unmute and let's give some love while we get spotlights back on Syd and Erica and Aaron. Yay. Thank you for those really special readings. So wonderful to hear your voices to the words. Some of the pieces that I gotten to read, on the page, and so to be able to hear that lifted through your voice is really amazing, and to hear all the other pieces that I haven't gotten to read yet. So thank you for that work. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we're going to, move into a little Q&A, but before we do, two special things. One, I want to give a shout out to a couple poets. One is the late Amy Uematsu. I had mentioned Larissa Mahou, who I met in France. A big reason why we were there was to talk about the Japanese American incarceration. And then also there was a tribute throughout to Amy Uematsu. There is a beautiful translation group called Passage, and they translated 37 of Amy's poems into this beautiful book. So one side is French, the other side is in English, and it is called Yellow Power. It essentially becomes Amy's 7th book.
Wow.
And so that was really special to celebrate her. And I also think it's really important for us to celebrate the living and the beings here who are also our heroes. We have a super special guest in attendance tonight. And I want to give so much love to Mitsuye Yamada, who is here. Hi, Mitsu. I'm going to take your photo, Mitsu. I see you. I can't. It's so, what a wonderful thing to have you here. Folks, the author of Camp Notes and Other Writings, of Desert Run Poems and Stories, a veteran of the pen and page, and as recent as 2019, Full Circle. Beautiful, all these beautiful, beautiful books. Mitsuye gave us permission to read one of her poems tonight. We were so delighted to know that you were going to attend, and so wanted to read. And I get the delight of reading it as a group with our amazing artists here. So Aaron, Erica, and Sid are going to join me, and we're gonna speak up a little bit louder, all of us, yeah, and read this for and to you and because of you, Mitsuye. So can I say your age, Mitsuye? Yeah. Mitsuye turned 102 this year. Anyone over, let's just say 90 to be safe? I mean, we should just be all about telling the age, I would hope. So 102 in July, and yeah, that's just awesome. And so,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to read to you now. This is from Full Circle, and one of my favorite poems called Sphere. If my world were a brain-shaped island lined with silk chiffon,
I would straddle it and fly into the open atmosphere.
Gentle breeze will raise fine hairs on my cheekbones.
As I sing in a voice I never had, a lovely tune I just made.
I will fulfill every single ineffable moment of life left in my body. That's Mitsuye Yamada from Full Circle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us read to you. Always a pleasure to see you. You look amazing.
You look beautiful.
Thank you, Mitsu.
You have angel wings.
I'm keeping them. Gotta have some joy when you're on a Zoom. So yeah, we are going to have a little bit of discussion time in our 20 or so minutes left. I'm going to throw out a couple things and just have us roll with it. So I'm always curious, as the curator for Nikkei Uncovered, and we, feature, by and large, Nikkei poets. We've had some guests, who are writing with and into the community, but for the most part, we're really featuring Nikkei poets, and we don't ever. I don't like determining a theme ahead of time. I really believe that whatever is coming out, it's not about the content that makes it Nikkei. It's you as poets, it's you as artists, you as writers that make it Nikkei. So whatever's coming out of you is Nikkei, And so to me, and so yeah, I'm curious what it means to y'all to kind of be a part of something like the Gate of Memory anthology, something like this space of 140 plus poets over 9 years in this digital space provided through Discover Nikkei. And then because, we also have y'all here coming in from different disciplines that sometimes probably merge and come together and maybe exist in different islands on their own at certain times. I would love for you to think about sharing when does something inform you that it should come out in a certain way? And I know that it's probably different every time, but maybe if you can think of an example of something that you may have initially been asked to put out as a poem, or you intended to be a poem, but maybe it came out as a graphic novel, a piece of music, a song, uh, a music review, an illustration, or a mixture of those. So yeah, whatever you're feeling, kind of answering to, we could just start right there.
I guess I could start answering the question of what it means to me to be part of a Nikkei poetic community. It really means the world to me. This is my only Nikkei community, is a poetry community. When I was growing up, I wasn't a part of really a part of a Japanese American community. We touched on it now and then with the JACL, but I don't know if it was because my parents were huge introverts or what. But I never felt like I was a part of a Nikkei community, and even now I do not have an in-person Japanese American community. So this is my touch point. This is where I connect is with this poetry community. And as I said before, it means the world to me. It's so exciting to me that finally that I feel like I can come and be a part of my heritage in that way.
Sid, do you
I
want to
can,
go?
okay, yeah, I can go. Yeah, I just want to echo the same thing. It means the world to me too. I feel like as a kid, like this was all I ever dreamed of, really, in a lot of ways. And so now to be here and like reading poems that were gestating in high school is just like a really full circle moment. And I think like the Japanese American population is not that giant, like it's a pretty small community. And hearing like Erica say her grandpa was a fisherman, it's like my grandpa was it's like there's so much in common and like so much food in common and so many like language like things in common that we grew up with. Um, and yeah, it means the world to me to like share all this with people when I often don't get to share any of that with my friends and other poets specifically. And then, yeah, I don't know. For me, it was really special I feel like when I was in high school, I wrote a lot about my grandparents because I was close with my grandparents and my grandma was getting old. And then I feel like once I got older, I kind of moved away from that because I was like, oh, Japanese American, all of it, that is a part of anything I write. And so I think now to go back to those poems and some of the new ones, just feels really special to like be in a community that understands like who my grandparents were and like what all those like subtle references mean. And So yeah, this was really special, and the community means a lot to me.
Yeah, I think to echo that, like I think I was lucky to come into like my political awareness on the West Coast in terms of like in Canada. Obviously our communities are so much smaller, like, the size of Canada's population is like this like equivalent to California. So like I think we had like, 22,000-ish people interned in Canada. Um and but there's like quite a big community in Vancouver. And so as I became more interested in, community arts and community organizing as a young person, um, I feel really fortunate that the Vancouver community was really there for me. But it's been more in recent years that I've, quote unquote, professionalized more as a writer artist that it's been so amazing to find, I think, like the resonances in terms of like just being able to, like, for example, just like the gate of memory, bringing people together. And a lot of my, I think, original writings was just to explore questions that I didn't have answers to. And like my sensei dad didn't really know much about his parents' experiences necessarily. And there was a lot of, obviously assimilation. And so those were the questions I was kind of writing into. And so to hear the resonances kind of ripple across kind of time and space has been really meaningful. And yeah, I think that's one thing I'm thinking about. And then to answer your other question, Tracy, about was it about form, kind of like writing? Why, like, so actually, the piece that I shared on Discover Nikkei, the visual kind of poem piece, um, I originally actually created that as this like accordion book that I drew out. And so it was actually a response to a prompt that a teacher of mine, Keel McClear, she's also a Japanese Canadian writer. She'd given us an Ursula K. Le Guin essay to read and respond to. It's called The Carrier Bag Theory and fiction, and it's looking at um, technology and kind of the hero's journey and looking at ways to interrogate kind of the solitary male hero type energy that is so prevalent in literature. And she asked us, what would you bring in your carrier bag? Like, write it down. And I was thinking a lot about just the things that would want to collectively offer to my communities, both past and present. And I think that Japanese, Canadian, and American and diasporic communities, there's just a lot of loss that we often think about. But I think that there's also a lot of to be gained too from the strength of like coming back together, whether it's across like generations or through writing or food and stories. And that was kind of what was behind that. Um, yeah. So that's kind of my answer. Yeah, and so that has been interesting because it's kind of sort of almost a poem. It's kind of a zine, like I've created like a zine book version of it. Um, yeah, it's got different forms and
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I really do hope that people will. I think probably one of the many, many links in the chat will direct you right to that beautiful illustration that has that visual poem. And we've been sharing it on our, respective Instagram accounts. And yeah, I'm always curious, right? Because, like sometimes for me, the reason why I paint is because I cannot fill any more words onto a page. I have to move it onto a different surface. You know what I mean? So I'm always curious to hear from other artists, like how do you, is it premeditated or is it something that you're like, I must do it this way. I didn't expect to do it this way. Aaron, maybe I'll float it to you. The relationship between or not. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened to me. Usually if I set out to write a poem, it's going to be a poem. If I set out to do a painting, it's going to be a painting. if I set out to combine the two, that's what it's going to be. So far, it's usually premeditated and it comes out that way. Um, I'm not going to, who knows what I'm going to do tomorrow? Who knows how that's going to come out? But yeah, so far, I kind of, yeah, I plan it out and it goes that way.
That's awesome. That's so impressive. I wish I could always do that. But yeah, sometimes I go by feel, but that's really cool. Syd, what about you? Can you talk a little bit about your process with music and writing about music?
Yeah, so I write about music. My blog is mostly album reviews, but I also make music as well. Um, I was just thinking of one instance where I wrote a poem and it was really flailing as a poem. And it ended up being a lot of the lyrics for a song that I wrote with my partner. And coincidentally or not, it was about grief. And my partner was also going through a hard time too. And so I feel like, well, one, obviously different mediums can do different things. And I th feel like one thing that I love about music is that there are no, like, it's a very sensory experience. And I guess the same with painting too, but that, like, it's through your ears, it's a physical experience. And I think it can do things that language can't sometimes. And so, I turn to it often when I'm trying to evoke, I guess, a different kind of reaction in the reader or make a reader or a listener, I guess, feel in a different kind of way. And in that instance, I think it was also about like it being communal, and which ties back into what I guess I was saying earlier about like I come to art for community more than anything, besides like catharsis. And so like this whole event, I think, is doing for me the same kind of thing that like a song might do as well.
Some, yeah, community and catharsis, right? To be able to connect through our stories, our memories, our words. So powerful. I think that this is the musical part for me to listen to like the vibration that's coming from each of your bodies. And to me, that's the music moment that I get to enjoy, that we all get to enjoy listening to the voice, the tone to your words. It's really special. Um, yeah, let's see. Do we have any questions coming in to the chat? Hopefully we can save this so all of you can, read some of the comments. Dear poets, heartwarming to hear about your grandparents' identity, remembrance. Feels very intimate. Thank you. It's from Kay. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, poets. Beautiful, powerful words. Joy. Such amazing variety and so much in common. Really wonderful to hear all the poems. And I think that says Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's see. Yeah, if you have any questions, please put it forth. And maybe while you're thinking of a question, okay, let's see. Here is one. Syd, you mentioned learning about your grandma. Is there anything you learned that you didn't mention in your poem?
Yeah, I mean, I learned there's pages and pages and pages of things that I didn't mention in my poem. Um, I'm trying to think of anything that comes off the top of my head. Um, I guess similarly to Erica, my mom basically knew nothing, I guess, about my grandma's experience because my grandma was just like, it was good, like shikatakana, like I don't know, it was just not something that was talked about. So it was fun to learn alongside my mom. I think a lot of these things about my grandma. And she was one of four sisters. She had a twin, so it was like a lot of family stories that were revealed as well. Um, but yeah, I'm happy to like if you want to DM me or something, any more specific questions. I'm struggling to come up with specific anecdotes off the top, but I learned so much, and I highly recommend everyone talking to their family about not just like incarceration, but obviously all the family stories.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. And you have another comment. one of someone's favorite lines, how much violence does it take to make me a man?
Mm.
Thank you for that line. And I would extend that question also to Aaron and Erica. You obviously when we are, I feel like sometimes the process of poetry is a dig. It's an excavation exercise. So, there's inevitably so much that we're finding as we go. We don't know. We don't know what we're going to discover as we go through, right? As we keep researching, as we're writing. So yeah, were there, do you have any thoughts on that? That aspect of when you were thinking about writing your pieces into language, into grandparents. I feel like grandparents really came up a lot on this particular reading, which is really cool. Yeah, things that maybe you might have been surprised or shocked to learn, and maybe you could write into it, and maybe you couldn't.
My I never met my grandparents. And both my parents have passed away. So when I write about my grandparents or my parents, it's all by memory, things that I remember my mother telling me, my father telling me. Um, I also happened to run across a Japanese blog that posted an article about my grandparents when they first returned to Japan before the war, which was a really amazing find. I couldn't believe it. It had their pictures there and things that I didn't know about them. So that was wonderful. And I think there's a book in Japanese, not translated, but in Japanese floating out there that mentioned my grandparents that I have to somehow get a hold of. But yeah, I tell people all the time, young writers, interview your elders before it's too late. Just get everything you can from them.
Yeah, similarly to Aaron, I didn't know like my Japanese Canadian grandparents. My bachan died when I was like 2 or 3, and I think that there's almost a way of like, yeah, I mentioned kind of writing into the stories because I just didn't know them, and it would be about imagining, or it would be like the book that I'm working on is actually a road trip novel type of story. So my sister and I drove to northern BC where our great grandfather worked before the internment incarceration era. And it was kind of like just exploring a lot of these questions. And I think that, there's only so much an archive can provide. And also, I don't think we can never really know the full story of people's lives. Even like my life, my dad's life, my siblings' life, like, like we really only know so much. And so I think there's the reality that sometimes you might never know. And so, how does one reckon with that? That's kind of the question that I think I'm kind of circling a lot right now is like, some people weren't documented. So many stories are lost with, displacement, with war, with there's so many things that are just kind of unspoken. And I don't know what the like answer is or the solution, but I think sometimes you kind of have to live the questions and also think about yeah, whose stories kind of aren't being told and what does it mean if we can't access those stories? Also kind of like what are the stories that we're making like today is something that I think about, like passing on and building community and like shifting these narratives. I think I'm kind of straying away from the original question, but I don't fully have an answer, I guess. Um, yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah. I think that it's good. It's good. All the tangents are good because there's so many tendrils, right, to wondering, the unknown.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
to many directions, right? And I think that's the joy of art at the same time. It's a space that allows us to write into the fantasy and reimagine the past.
Hmm.
Like when you, Aaron, you talked about, writing something a daydream, um, of meeting your grandfather. We can invent these things anyway, and in some way, I feel like they are messages. They're just like kind of coming through us. I wanted to lift up one more question. Kay asks, so curious about what you credit as the source of your relationship with words. Prolific reading, other poets, the world, music, an assignment, a good deadline is helpful. But yeah, what do you credit at this moment in time? Because I think it can shift. It can shift greatly season to season, year to year. So just maybe right now.
I think I can start because I've actually been having a really hard time with writing lately. And so I think that's why I've been doing more visual work, more work with my hands. It feels like I need to do something more hands-on and tactile. But I think when I think about the source of why I want to write a book or why I write in general is exploring curiosities and also like thinking about responsibility and like feeling like there's a responsibility to sharing stories that maybe aren't otherwise going to be shared or talked about. And when I think about like source of inspiration, like I can think about reading this book by Lisa Ko called The Leavers, which I don't know if people have read it, but she writes about this uh, a boy, like a Chinese boy, being adopted into a white family and raised in New York, and it kind of explores like his immigration, migrant race, like there's all these things. And I just was so amazed reading that book is what this story, like a fiction novel, could do to like think about bringing in the contemporary like realities of identity and politics. And so, yeah, I think that there's definitely like a lot about reading that's just done so much for me, but also it's like, it feels like responsibility too, because it's like to tell things that haven't been talked about or the difficult thing to talk about.
Aaron, do you want to go or I can go? Or if you
Sure, sure. So I credit my relationship with poetry to my wife. I started out as a musician. I did my first round of education, my undergrad and grad work in music. And then I realized I was always more visually oriented than orally. So I turned into a painter and a graphic designer. And then somewhere in there, my wife, who was a lawyer, wanted to become a writer. So she became a poet and she would drag me to all these poetry readings. And she would also show me poems that she was writing and would ask me what I thought about them. And I didn't have a clue. So I thought, maybe if I study on my own and write some poetry on my own, maybe I can give her some kind of feedback. So that's what I started to do. Um, and then I eventually, and she got her MFA in creative writing. And 7 years later, I went through the same program and got my MFA as well. So yeah, it's all her fault, I will say. That's who I credit.
I'll go quickly since I don't know if we're hitting the time or it's my bedtime, but um I think for me, I am someone who personality wise and because of the nexus of the various identities I hold, I guess I've always felt kind of disconnected from my body, and then also from other people, like just feeling kind of alienated by other people. And I think I started writing poetry and reading poetry when I was pretty like in middle school, and I think what first grabbed me and what has made me keep reading poetry and writing poetry is this feeling of truth, subjective truth, obviously, that is a part of connection. Like I'll read something and be like, oh, like this is an experience that feels particularly, or a feeling, or an ephemeral whatever that feels particularly true, and not the fact that someone else feels it and can describe it in this way that feels true to me, is something I find I hold really precious, I guess, to myself, as a way of connecting with other people, I guess. And I think I'm also like a very, I think a lot in language. Like, I don't know, I'm a very language oriented person. That's how I understand the world and like process the world. So I think that's another part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Syd.
I credit my creative spirit to my father, who was a Senryu enthusiast. Senryu is like haiku, and it's a 17 syllable Japanese. But he used to gather the issei in our dining room while my mother served sushi, and I was kind of the waitress who would wait on the poets who gathered together, and they met every month, the first Sunday of every month, and December 7th, 1941, happened to be the first Sunday of that month, and they were gathered together when they heard about Pearl Harbor, and so the whole thing is all kind of bundled up together, and so I credit my creative spirit to my father, who was a Senryu enthusiast, and I think that writing poetry is something that comes out of your mind and your spirit and your heart. It's something that when you're not quite sure how to express yourself in everyday language, it comes out as poetry. And in my case, because I used to watch my father and his Senryu group would gather together. When I became a teacher of creative writing myself, I gathered together as a group of Nikkei women, and we called ourselves Asian American women writers. And we gathered together in our dining room, and we wrote poetry. And the way that we met together was we would talk for about an hour or so about what happened to us in the past month, and then we would go into our little corners and write whatever it was that was in our mind at that moment, and then we would gather together again, and then we would share our writings with each other before we disbanded for the day. And so it was the Asian American writers, women writers group that I had was a wonderful little group of women who was teaching either at University of California in Irvine or in any high school teachers, and they were really hungry to get together with other Asian American women. And so it was a wonderful group of women who gathered together and did our writing. And we did publish a book eventually, but it was a wonderful little group of women. And Traci, thank you for getting this wonderful group of people together today. It just nourishes my heart and soul.
Thank you, Mitsu. It's so great to hear you. I feel like we should, and whenever you're up to it, just have a little coffee clatch with you, and just all of us get to ask me questions.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, that would be so wonderful. And I would hope that Erica and Syd and Aaron might join me.
Well, thank God I'm still quite healthy. I live with my daughter and her husband, and my granddaughter and her husband, and I live I live with a lot of creative young energy in this household. And so she's poking me here, but
No, 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 it's great. Hi, Hetty. No, I think it's awesome. And you know what? I bet they get so much energy from you.
yeah,
Um,
we feed each other. It's really
Absolutely.
wonderful to
Yeah, you keep them young. So, you know,
we have this wonderful household of young energy,
yeah.
which is yeah. I love those wings behind you,
I'll get
Tracy.
you some. Do you want a pair?
Yeah.
I'll get you a pair. We can be twins. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, me
that's
too. I'm
awesome.
so glad to see you. I'm glad that we're so lucky to let you have the last word here. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still healthy. Thank God. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's all give it up for Mitsuye Yamada, everybody. This is such a special treat. And let's also please again, Erin Caycedo-Kimura, Erica, I'm so sorry, Erica Isomura and Syd Westley, and thank you so, so much to, the Janum crew. I have to make a few announcements. They want me to definitely get this in. There is a series that is called the Nima Voices series, and you can check it out. They're going to provide a link here. They recently just released their episode featuring actor Christopher Sean, who was interviewed by guest host Tamlin Tomita. And so they chatted about family background, his acting experience, and his engagement with the Japanese American community. We are hoping that you'll consider your end of year donation to Discover Nikkei's 20 for 20 campaign. There's access to content and virtual programs are all free, but they do need funding. We are really hoping that this time next year, we're going to get to host a big celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Nikkei Uncovered Poetry column. So they're going to put the link in here. We're going to do some sort of hybrid virtual in-person thing. I hope that you all will consider coming out to LA, Erica and Sid and Aaron. That would be amazing. But we'll figure out how to have you read no matter what. We'll figure it out. So there's a lot of poets, over 140, and probably 160 by that time. But yeah, we really want to celebrate big. And finally, Discover Nikkei would love to hear from you. The Nikkei Uncovered column was a result of suggestions from the community. So if there's something in your mind to pitch, please, by all means, that would be really, really wonderful. So one more time, Erin Caycedo-Kimura, Erica Isomura, and Syd Westley, thank you so much for your time and your talent and
Thank
your
you.
gifts and your sharing. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mitsu. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. I think I saw Jeannie Nakano. Thank you. Oh, Patricia. Yeah, awesome. So great to see y'all. Shizue, Colleen, Zara. Thank you, everybody.